Hey, how you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Dan Herr here for ACTE 699, Module 8, Data Collection. All right. So, at the risk of sounding like a high school math teacher, this is kind of my thing. I broke down a common unit assessment for our Unit 3 test here with my geometry class. In hindsight, maybe I should have done a smaller exam, mostly because we have multiple pages, multiple questions, 26 to be exact, a lot of partial credit, a lot of problems where you have to be somewhat thoughtful with how you take points off. The nice thing is, because it's a common assessment, we've been grading this same exam for the best part of 5 years. So, and we've met while grading it, so we're pretty consistent with how we're going to take points off and whatnot. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into the data. In lieu of student names, I threw down just alphabetical numbers. That way it was pretty simple. Some things that I set up right away, and I was thankful I did. I started labeling this up here, question 1, question 2, and then you can click and drag all of that across, and it automatically fills in the question numbers, which that was very, very beneficial. Woot woot, shout out to Excel on that one. Similarly with the student numbers, I could just 1, 2, and then drag it all the way down to fill in 23. Some other things that I did right away that I thought was beneficial. I put the question total points down here. In the videos that Ali was showing us, a lot of those were single point questions. You either got it or you didn't. By having the point values there, that could help me sort of go through when I was punching all the data in. Along those lines, I wish I would have started a timer. When I started punching the data in, the video said it works really well to have somebody read the scores off to you. That was not something that I had at my capabilities, so it took me a little over an hour to punch in all 23 tests. So 23 students, and the questions were 26 questions, so I guess I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment, but it also lets me know sort of what I was going to be in for when it comes to the actual data collection, right? So what I did is I punched in the students' score out of, that they earned out of the possible here. I also ran the average scores, which those can be a little misleading because, like question 25, for instance, the average score was 3.2. Oh, well, then they must have done a lot better than, just for argument's sake, question 21 here, where they had 0.95. Well, not really, because this one was out of 1 point, where this one was out of 4 points. So what I then did is I found the percentage correct. So like right here, percentage-wise for this question, out of all 23 students, 95%, a little more than that actually, earned the highest point total. So that's pretty sweet there. Where here, if we look and we compare, it's, even though it's a much higher raw data, well, it's actually only 82%. So it takes into account how much each problem was worth. But yeah, we'll come back to that. Put a pin in that. That's a phrase they like to use here a ton here at Hempfield. Then I summed up what each student earned out of 60 points, threw that total down there, and then found their percentages. Again, shout out to Excel. Just punch the formula in once, scroll down. It's pretty sweet. The breakdown of the grades, well, we had 8 A's, 8 B's, 2 C's, 3 C's, sorry for misspeaking, 2 D's and 2 F's. So it was definitely skewed towards the A's and the B's. That's what both of these graphs show here for a visual. Our mean, 82%. So we have been using common assessments here at Hempfield for quite some time. We kind of have them set up to have a B average. If If we're at the high Bs, well, that means we either did A, a really good job teaching that particular section, or B, have a higher than normal class understanding. Well, that's about as nicely as I can word that. If you're below a B, well, we've kind of ironed the tests out. So at that point, it's not the test if it's below the B. So as teachers, then we can reflect and say, okay, where collectively as a unit, where did I not prepare the students well enough? Median, again, very similar to the mean. It lets us know that it is, I actually think this is a little truer representation, because we did have some outliers, some rather low Fs that pulled the mean down. So that lets me know that my data is a little bit skewed to the right, which is a positive from a statistical standpoint. Whoop, whoop. Shout out to the stats guys and gals. But yeah, let's really break down what the data looked like. The nice thing about Excel, you can highlight. So I highlighted all my question percentages, and I went up here to conditional formatting, and it actually threw these color codes in for me right away. And that's in the program. It's super user friendly. So when you see that dark green, question 5 here, and then I can obviously go back and reference my unit test. Question 5, well, that had to deal with angle relationships. The students really crushed those angle relationships in the parallel lines. And it was strictly a math problem. What I mean by that is, and it's one of those, forgive me for being silly, but this is why I include the camera. I do think it's helpful. So like right there, what are we talking about? We're talking about, sorry for being off screen, we're talking about parallel lines, and we're talking about finding angle relationships. Go team, right? Whereas we come down here and right away, question 13. Well, question 13 was a word problem that they had to read, interpret, and get all of that figured out. And it was only a 1-point problem, so that means it was either all or nothing. One of the things I noticed very quickly about punching the data in, as well as the color code sort of confirmed it. My 1-point problems, you're going to see a lot more red in those, because you either have it or you don't. There's not a whole lot of partial for those particular problems, and that's by design. But that also makes us say, okay, well, what's going on here? In fact, that stayed consistent. That's one of the things that, we do this to be reflective, right? So my students, when they were strictly traditional, air quote, math problems, they did exceedingly well, but when it was more word-based, that's definitely an area where I can grow as a teacher to help future geometry students really have a good understanding of that, right? And that's part of the reason we do what we do, is we look at these problems and we say, all right, is there any commonality? Like right here, questions 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. Now, granted, they weren't all, 21 was really well done, but they were all problems that had to do with a logic table, and it's sometimes true, always true, or never true. Well, because they had to decide it's one of those three, and from a logical breakdown, like that can be a lot to take in. And, looking back, now, again, we know from teaching this a lot of times, those are some of the harder problems on the test, but the data confirms that. It's not just a hunch, so it's definitely an area where I can go back and reteach some of those. Similarly here, questions 13 and 14 were very word-heavy problems. Looking here, question 2 is a multiple choice problem, and a multiple choice problem where there was a lot of symbolism, so maybe I go back and I try to focus more on that symbolism. Just me being a little bit of a dork, the last 2 questions, 25 and 26, were proofs, and that's an area where we struggled in years past. So I was super pleased to see that we were about an 80-ish, 82, 84% correct on those proofs, respectively. Yeah, but again, the big takeaways is, how does the data influence our teaching? Well, the key there for me personally, be proud of the fact that they really succeeded on the traditional math problems, but it really helped my students grow when it comes to the word problems. All right? Thank you, guys.